revenues in a simulation. And we even started forecasting the operating charges. We should finish with it for, today, finish the operating budget, and then from the operating budget, get to a cash flow statement from the operating activity. So this is at least the objective for today. Maybe we could also try our hand a bit in calculating the costs. That would be helpful so that we would be able to come back to the market planning to better to create a better foundation for the price policy. But before we start, I want to ask you if you tried and if you made any progress with forecasting your own revenues. Did you start forecasting your revenues for your own business ideas? I imagine that's a no. Okay, at least in the second part of our discussion, I want to talk with each of you to see what the situation is. At least make a list of revenues and charges and discuss a bit about the way you should approach them. Also, before we start, I wanted to ask you, well, those not the Erasmus students, but those from within the program, if you made any progress with the projects for the other discipline, the internship discipline.
I think that's just me from the
I guess it's just you for now, right?
Present here. Yeah, I made some progress. I still have something to complete there. I will probably upload it before we meet, because that will be the date of exam. So yeah, as I see it right now, the effort that's needed for this project, it's way higher. So I'm focusing on that a little bit and working on them in parallel. I'm doing the prioritization thing as a job, so I need to kind of manage to fit a little bit all of them in the schedule. But this is how I'm working on everything right now.
Of course, I agree for sure. The effort needed for this project is a lot higher. In my opinion, this discipline should be at the core of your master's program. In this, by that saying that, and you have seen that already, it synthesizes skills and information from different important disciplines like marketing, accounting, financial statement analysis, and so on. So, of course, the effort is a lot greater for this discipline. I was just asking because I want to see if I can be of any help. On one hand, I want to make sure that everybody is on the right track, that you establish the organizations in which or for which you are going to perform the analysis. And I imagine that you might have questions. But anyway, normally this would be our sixth meeting, and we have one more, the meeting from the following week. But I just wanted to say that if you are doing progress with both of the projects, I mean, we can meet anytime you want. So if you talk among yourselves and you establish that you need another meeting or even more, just let me know. You have my email, you can write me an email and we can meet the way we are doing right now and we can discuss each project, no problem. So I just wanted you to know that the door is open. I will be waiting for you to write me an email.
Yeah, really appreciate it. Well, I usually write to you and you reply very fast, so I appreciate that. If my colleagues requested or needed, we will probably contact you. But until now, I've asked my questions via email and you've replied very quickly. So I'm gonna probably do.
I will try to do so, of course, but I just wanted to know that we, from my point of view, we can meet 2, 3, 4 times. I don't know, whatever is required for you to finalize the projects. Because the presentations, you will be doing them, I imagine in June. We'll see, for sure in June.
Well, we don't have yet the schedule of the exams.
Right, but it will be in June for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so let's see for the what we have left from the forecast of the expenses. I'm going to show my screen. Just 1 second. So I'm back in the Google Sheet in which we started the simulation last week. You all have access to it, and again, as I was saying last week, in my opinion, it could be a good idea for you to copy the sheet and just adapt it to your own needs. I'm imagining that at least some of the expenses, you will have them as well. I mean, for sure, each of you will have expenses with wages, social contributions, depreciation. So many of these types of expenses, you will have them also. And in those cases, I imagine that it would be easier for you just to take the table format from my simulation and adapt them to your own situation. Again, it will be up to you, but I think it could be one way to approach it. Me, myself, I always do as I'm doing right now. I always start from a blank Excel sheet or Google sheet. But I'm sure that it can be done this way as well, taking the tables and adapting them. So, just a quick reminder, we made the simulation for a company that processes vegetables, mostly potatoes. We started from the idea of the company of 2 students that graduated, I don't remember, 2 or 3 years ago from the Romanian version of this masters. And I visited them a few weeks ago with a group of students. I remember that I even showed you some pictures last time, and I thought it would be maybe interesting to do a simulation for their business. So this is a company, I'm reminding you, that buys vegetables and processes them. So basically it sells either whole potatoes, French fries, wedges, and so on to restaurants. So we forecasted the revenues separately on these, however, how many they are. It's 8 types of products, and we will have the 9th type of revenue, the revenues from the subsidies, but we can only forecast them once we forecast the depreciation charges. So we went on with the charges. We estimated the charges with the raw materials, packaging materials, and, well, we said consumables. Now we are getting to the charges with the gross wages. Again, I am sure that each of you will have employees, so you will all have charges with gross wages. So this is what I am proposing. Unfortunately, I have some trouble with my mouse. I hope that I can manage it. I can manage it this way. So again, in the end, at the end of this table, we will want to have the forecast of the gross wages on a yearly basis. But as we did last time, we want to make sure that we put in the table all the determining factors. Now, what are the determining factors for the yearly value of the charges with the gross wages? Well, it depends on the way that we pay the salaries to the employees. There could be several ways to do it, but in most of the cases, the wage expenses are fixed expenses. So statistically speaking, for sure, mostly they are fixed expenses, meaning that the volume of production is not found among their determining factor. So most of the times you have, I don't know, 2, 3, 5, 10 employees. Each of them has a fixed salary, and that way you can calculate the monthly salaries as, I don't know, a sum of all the individual wages, or maybe you, by simplifying things, you can have 2 or 3 personnel categories, and on each type of personnel, for each type of personnel, you have, let's say, an average gross wage, and you multiply the number of employees from each type of employee to the average individual wage, and you sum them up and you obtain the monthly value of the gross wages. Then you multiply by the number of months for each period. Of course, we will multiply it by 12 because we only do the forecast for the first 5 years, and each one of them would be a complete year. And that is how we will get to the value of the charges with the gross wages. There are other ways, of course, to pay wages. There are companies that pay, at least in part, wages depending on the productivity or the volume of the production, or on the value of the sales. So there are all sort of combinations, but again, this fixed approach is the most common one. So this is what I am going to use. So I'm going to start with the volume of the personnel, number of employees. And I don't know what to call them, these people. The firm that we visited, the company that I was talking about, that we took as an example, they had 5 employees, but in addition, there were another 5 members of the family of the 2 entrepreneurs that also worked without being paid as employees. So in reality, there are 10 people really working there, although only 5 of them are officially on the payroll. That's one. And the second problem, I have no idea what they should be called. Maybe those that are working, that are operating the line, we could call them line operators, maybe. Let's say line operators. Then the 5 that are working directly in the production hall. Then there are 2 members of the family that do multiple tasks, but mainly they are involved in delivering the products, and of course also the raw materials. So let's say drivers, one. I will imagine one. Let's stay with one. And of course, there's someone that is dealing with the relationship with the local authorities, suppliers, clients, the accounting part, some publicity. Let's just call him manager. It doesn't really matter that much. It's only a simulation. I don't think I can manage with this mouse. So I'm going to mark the number of the employees in green as I did last week for all the other hypotheses. And I'm gonna say less than they have, let's say 4 line operators, 1 driver and 1 manager. Let's stick to 6, which is a lot for a startup. Most startups, well, start with no employees or maybe 1 employee at the most. 6 is a lot. But again, this company that started its activity in June, end of June, I believe, last year, so it's less than 1 year old, already needs 10 people, and with the investments that they are planning to do, they are already implementing this year. By the end of the year, they will have 10 more, so they will get to about 20 people working there. So again, number of employees, I have the number of employees here by type. Then I need to establish the monthly wages. So I'm taking the same categories. Now, I'm not really sure what the monthly wages should be, depending also on the region, but imagining that this is happening in a rural area, as it does for the company that we took as an example, a line operator should probably have a net wage of, I would imagine, 2,500 lei, which would be maybe 4,600, 4,700, let's say 4,600 lei, so 900 euros, 900, let's say 900 euros. For the driver, let's say 1,000, manager, whatever, 1,000. So I don't plan to increase the wages in the future. Now, remember that we are doing the forecasting in current prices, in constant prices or real prices, the prices of today, which means that we aren't forecasting any inflation. So there's no point in imagining that the wages will increase because of inflation. There's no inflation in our forecasting. Nevertheless, there could be other reasons for increasing the wages later on. We could be planning to increase the wages in the second or third year as the production increases, to stimulate the employees that I would imagine work more. So that could be, it's up to you. I'm going to keep it simple. I'm going to keep the same wages for the entire period. But again, as you can see, it would not be any more difficult to increase the wages and explain in a phrase maybe why you did so. So I have the number of employees. Well, I planned it. I planned for the monthly individual gross wages. Now, again, this is a plan. I could be planning to pay them 200 euros a month, but it would be absurd because for starters, it would be illegal. The minimum wages of 3,300 lei. That's one thing. Apart from that, I also need to make sure that I'm taking into account the real level of the wages on the local market. because I may be planning to pay them the minimum wage, but if they have other opportunities, if the market is different, I won't be able to find any. So I have to ground, obviously, my planning on the real local conditions. So assuming that I did so, I will go on. I need the number of months or period for each period. Of course, in our case, each period, meaning each year from the forecasting period, contains 12 months. Sometimes it could be different. You could be starting the first year not at the beginning, and it might contain less than 12 months, for depending on how you approach the forecasting, but normally this would not be the case. So now I can say charges with gross wages, and I will calculate their value as a product between, on one hand, the number of months, 12, and now I'm going to use the function sum product of, on one hand, the number of employees per type of employee, and on the other hand, the monthly gross wages for the different types. So it's 67,200 euros, which is a lot. But again, we have to judge that. We can judge that at the end when we finish with the budget. We will see how we do against the revenues. Just 1 second. So we're done with this. Now we can estimate the social charges. Just 1 second to copy the format of the table. So the social contributions. Remember that in this table, number 27, we forecasted the charges with the gross wages. So if the gross wage for, I don't know, a line operator is of 900 euros a month, that would probably mean that he is getting paid, what? 480 to 500 euros, almost 500 euros, the net wage. But the difference between those 500 euros and the entire value of 900 is made of what? The tax that the employee needs to pay to the public budget, and the different contributions of the employee. The company retains the tax, the wage tax and the contributions, pays them directly to the budget, and only pays the employee the rest, as you probably know. But I just want to underline that apart from the gross wage, which contains the contributions of the employee, the company separately pays some additional social contributions of 2.25% of the value of the gross wages. So the determining factors for this expense are, on one hand, the wage fund, let's say gross wage fund, meaning the yearly value of the gross wages or the value of the expenses with the gross wages that we estimated within the previous table. And the second determining factor would be the percentage of the social contribution. How should I call it? The term in Romanian is the contribution for labor insurance, let's not complicate things. In Romanian is CAM, but let's just say the percentage of the social contributions. Now, at this time in Romania, it's 2.25%. If you are imagining the investment somewhere else, you use the ratio that's applicable there. So now I can calculate the charges with the social contributions. I'm going to use the round function of the product between the two. So these would be the social contributions supported by the company, apart again from the gross wages. Now, I will take just a second to register these expenses in our budget. On one hand, the charges with the gross wages, table 27, and the charges with the social contributions, table 28. Up until now, things don't look that great because we are really getting close to the bottom line. We're still on a profit in the first year, but we have a long list of charges, even if their value will not be that high. The way we are going, we will be registering losses in the first year, but maybe we will try to play just a bit with the revenues. We will also have to estimate the revenues from subsidies, but they will only be a fraction of the depreciation charges. So the way we are going right now, we will be registering losses in, I would say, the first 2 years. We will have to simulate an increase of the revenues. And we are going to consult also the situation of the company from Gottlob, from which we started, but we'll do that later on. For now, let's finish with the tables for each type of expense. We are continuing with the depreciation charges. Now, I only have one small problem here, because we are obviously talking about the depreciation of what? Of the fixed assets. So I need to put here in this table the gross values of all the intangible and the tangible assets, well, apart from the land, which does not depreciate, and establish the depreciation periods. The problem being that I don't have a list of assets. I'm going to make one up very fast. So starting from what, or maybe I would better just use the budget that I simulated with you. Let's see where it is. Here. Okay, so this is what I have in my budget. Not really for the same business. It was a budget for a company that was producing fruit juice, I guess in a way close, as it processes fruit. Here also we have a production hall exactly of 200 square meters, as the entrepreneurs from Gottlob have exactly a production hall of 200 square meters. The equipment would be a bit different, but not that different. So I will simply use the values from this budget that we simulated together. First, I will copy the name of the assets up until here. Now I need the values like this. So these are the gross values of all these resources. Now I just want to point out that in this investment, and this would be also true for some of you, I had construction works. So I started from a piece of land. I should have technical projects. Well, a company should prepare the technical project. I should pay in general to the city hall to get the construction permit. With the construction works, if you remember, I am also to pay a tax to the inspection in the field of constructions. I also need a site engineer. Why am I saying this? Because as you can see, there are different services that are required with the construction of the buildings. So what you should normally do would be to capitalize these expenses, so that when you register the value of the constructions in your accounting system, you would register them, the construction works, in particular in this case the production hall. I should register it not at 130,000, but I should integrate in this value also the value of the different services required to get in the end to have the production hall, so that services with the technical project and the site engineer and the inspection and so on. I just wanted to say that it's not hard, but I don't want to complicate things any further. So what I should do is at least go in here in this position where I have the production hall and add up the different services. I'm not going to do it so that I would complicate things. Let's say that I'm ignoring those services. The gross values of these resources, I'm planning to keep them for the entire forecasting period. There's no reason why I should forecast them in a different manner. So these are the gross values. I should insert a line here to specify that. Okay. Now, in order to be able to calculate the depreciation charges, I now need the depreciation durations, periods. Now, in Romania, there is a catalog that specifies not really periods, but rather intervals for the depreciation for different types of fixed assets. I don't believe there's any reason to go into details. There's a catalog from 2004. If you want, you can look it up on Google, you will find it immediately. The point is that this catalog establishes intervals for more or less all the possible types of intangible and tangible assets. And you are to choose, when you register the asset into your accounting, at the beginning you are to choose the exact period within that interval for at least the fiscal depreciation. But these are details. I'm going to copy the names, the types of the different resources, and I'm going to approximate the periods. I'm going to color the cells here in green because these will be hypotheses established and thus values introduced from the keyboard. For the production hall, it could be somewhere around 40 to 50 years. I'm going to say 40 years. For the warehouse, the same warehouses, because I have two. For the office, it could be the same. For the fence, let's say 20 years. For the parking lot, I'm not really sure. Let's say 20 years as well. And for the concrete platform, hopefully. For the connections to utilities, I guess it could be 30 years. Washing system, these are already equipments. We could probably go with somewhere between 6 and 8. Let's say 8 for each of them. For the truck, it's usually for cars, usually 4 to 6, let's say 5. For the furniture set is 9 to 12, let's say 10. For the computer, it should be about 3 years, and the same for the computer program. Okay, now that we have the depreciation periods, we can calculate the yearly depreciation charges by, of course, employing the linear method for depreciation, for calculating the depreciation charges. I will just say here depreciation, and we will calculate the charges for each item. For the production hall, I simply divide the gross value by the depreciation period, 40 in this case. And I'm doing the same for all of them, but I should be using the round function. The depreciation expenses are, as you can see, fixed expenses that do not depend on the volume of production. There could be some exceptions that in theory you could be depreciating some assets in accordance with their volume of usage. Not really, but in theory. Like a car, you could depreciate it with the number of kilometers. But in practice, in most of the cases, we are simply using the linear method like I'm doing here to calculate the depreciation expenses. So the values are the same for the entire depreciation period, which means that everything that I did here could be correct with two exceptions. For the computer program and for the computer and the computer program, the depreciation period is free, which means that after the third year, there's nothing left. So the depreciation becomes zero, the depreciation charge, of course. So now I can calculate the total depreciation charges for each year, I mean, of course. There we go. So at the beginning it's 29,000 and it decreases after the third year because of the decrease in the depreciation charges for the computer and for the computer program. 1 second. So this would be a larger table, but my suggestion is to use the same structure for your own calculations. I mean, for sure, as you all have investments, for sure you will have assets to depreciate. So you can simply copy the table and adapt it. I'm registering the depreciation charge in our budget. And now, as we have the depreciation charges, we can also forecast these revenues with subsidies. Now, what's going on with this? The subsidies, we are collecting them, we are cashing them when? Probably during the implementation period, so before the beginning of the operating cycle. So within these 24 months of implementation. Nevertheless, from the accounting point of view, we cannot register the revenues with the subsidies at the moment when we collect the subsidies. Let's say that we sign the subsidy contract at the beginning of the implementation period. We start implementing the investment. Once we're done with it, so after the 2 years of implementation in this case, we start operating the investment. From the accounting point of view, the depreciation process starts the month after. So let's say that this month we start the operating activity, and from the following month we start depreciating or calculating the depreciation expenses for the different investment components. So now, as we register the depreciation charges, we reduce the balance of the subsidy, and we recognize part of the subsidy as revenue. So for instance, in my case, if I used the subsidy to finance, at least in part, construction, my production hall, that would depreciate in 40 years. For the entire period of 40 years, I will go on registering revenues from subsidies. Look. I have here the value of the depreciation charges. I will do a separate table with the revenues from investments, from subsidies from investments. It's just that I can't use my mouse. Okay, so on one hand, I need the depreciation charges, and I'm taking them from the previous table. And I know that I need to recognize a part of the subsidies as revenue each year in correspondence with the depreciation charges. But how much? For the entire value of the depreciation charges? No, a percentage of it. What percentage? Same as the percentage of the subsidies in the total of the financing sources for these assets. I'm going back to my budget, investment budget, and the structure of the financing sources. And let's see. The value of the subsidies was of what? There it is. So the gross value of subsidized investments, basically what I have here. Now the value of the subsidies, and I'm taking it from the other sheet. It was of 194,650. Now I'm calculating the percentage. So subsidies over investments, it was about 45, 46%. And now I can apply this percentage to the depreciation charges. So I'm going to recognize 45.88% of the depreciation charges of each year as revenues. Well, I should rather say that I'm going to recognize 13,431 euros from the balance of the subsidies as revenues each year based on this calculation. And I'm going to use the round function again. And I'm registering them in the budget. Here. So, does anyone have any questions concerning the way we forecast the revenues with the subsidies from investments? We have the depreciation charges. We have received subsidies at the beginning during the implementation phase, but they are not yet registered as revenues. We will be registering them as revenues and thus reducing their balance in time as we depreciate the assets financed through these subsidies. So if the depreciation charges for 1 year are of maybe 20,000 euros, and the assets have been financed entirely 100% through subsidies, we reduce the value of the subsidies by 20,000 and we recognize within that year those 20,000 euros of the subsidies as revenue. But if the financing of these assets was of only 50% of subsidies, we only recognize subsidies as revenues of up to 50% of the value of the depreciation charges. So charges with the land tax, let's see. We have land and we have to pay taxes on it. Now, this could be a bit trickier because there are all sorts of grids in accordance to which the land tax could be calculated. Not to make things complicated, I'm just going to use the value of the land and we are going to apply ratio for a percentage for the land tax on it. So let's say value of the land. And in my case, it was of 60,000. And I'm planning to keep it for the entire forecasting period. Then let's say percentage of the land tax. Let's say 0.5%. And the yearly charges. Now the building tax. Value of the buildings. Let's say value of all the constructions. The fiscal code in Romania says specifies an interval between 0.5% and 1.3%. And the local council, so of each town, is to establish the specific building tax within that interval. Nevertheless, in Timișoara, it's more than that. It's 50% over the maximum limit imposed by the fiscal code, so it's 1.95%. So depending on where your investment is being done, it could be different, but let's say 1%. Okay, we register these expenses in the operating budget. Of the land tax and the building tax. For the car tax, insurance, maintenance, and all this, these will probably be less important expenses in terms of values, but well, important nevertheless. So car tax, there's not much of determining factors to include here. The tax is or should be dependent on the capacity of the engine of the car. So let's simply say 100 euros. For insurance services, let's say 1000. Here, although this could decrease a bit. Maintenance services. For the fuel, probably this should be variable charges. So we should connect them to the volume of the production and of the sales. But on the other hand, they would probably not be that great, so I'm not really sure that it's worth the effort. I'm just going to not waste any more time. I'm just going to estimate them for the first year. Let's say at 2000, and from that point on, let's say sales index, calculate the sales index. The value of the sales from the second year of over the value of the sales for the first year. And I'm going to increase them with the sales index. Charges with electricity. Now, for sure, there would be different determinants for the charges with the electricity. The most important ones, I would imagine, in this case, would be the charges with the electricity consumed by the production process. So these would probably be mostly variable charges. The more we produce, the more electricity we would consume. But apart from that, we would also use electricity for, who knows, maybe heating, maybe for the office, maybe for the illumination of the production hall. And these would be fixed charges. So if we would want to be accurate, we could estimate them separately, the fixed charges and the variable charges. Nevertheless, in my opinion, at least, the fixed charges would be very low. So it would not really be worthing the effort of forecasting the fixed charges separately, which is why we could imagine them all to be variable, proportional to the value of the sales, which at its turn is proportional to the value of the volume of the production. So more or less I could do the same thing as here to make it simple. It would be, of course, more accurate if I would take each product separately and approximate a specific consumption of electricity. To process maybe 1,000 kilos of potatoes, I would need to consume maybe 10 kilowatts of electricity. So I should be able to establish a specific consumption for each type of product, and based on that and on the value of production for each type of product, I could estimate the total consumption of electricity, then multiply it by the price and get to the value of the charges. But that would mean consuming another 10 minutes with something that would not be that important as in the total value of the budget. Okay, for the water, there's water being used to wash the potatoes, water to wash the production lines. So this would make for variable expenses. But apart from that, of course, there's water being used for the consumption or administrative consumption for the personnel, which would surely be less important. in any case, let's say 1,000 for the first year, and that it will be increasing proportionally to the value of the production. For the charges with the services for emptying the septic tank, again, it would be variable, a variable expense, but for sure less. You probably need to empty the septic tank maybe once a month at the beginning, paying maybe 50 euros a month, which would mean 600 euros for the first year, and it would increase as the volume of production would increase as well. For the telecommunication services, these would be fixed expenses, I would imagine. I say number of months. The monthly fee. And with one phone and maybe access to internet, it could be what, 20 euros? Let's say 25 euros. It could even be less. Charges with the telecommunication services, 12 times 25, 300 a year. So next, I believe we have the accounting services, maybe. Publicity services. We could approach it in the same manner. We could plan for a fixed budget each year, let's say monthly budget, publicity budget. Based on, of course, our communication strategy, let's say 200 euros. Same for the entire period, or not. It's not mandatory. Then, yes, we have the accounting services. For such a company, yes, I guess somewhere between 150 and 250 euros a month would be accurate. For the bank fees, I don't need the table because I already have one. I have it here. We simulated the reimbursement chart, and within the reimbursement chart for the bank loan, we forecasted the interest and the administration fees, which are being paid each month. Now, please remember that we would probably contract the bank loan at the beginning of the implementation period, which would mean that the first month from the reimbursement chart would be more or less the first month of the implementation period, which means that by the time the implementation period ends and the operating period begins, we would probably be done with, I guess, the first 2 years of the reimbursement chart. So we should be somewhere here. Now, I'm calculating the yearly interest charges and administration fees, but just remember that the first 2 years would not be appearing in our operating budget because this happens before the start of the operating activity. So the interest for the first 12 months and the administration fees. Second year, So this is the end of the implementation period. Month 36, this should be the end of the third year, which is the first year of operations. Month 48, the fourth year of reimbursement, which is the second year of the forecasting period for the operating activity. And month 60, the end of the reimbursement period, the third year, for the end of the third year for our forecasting period of the operating activity. Now, I will just say here interest and administration fees. Year 1 to 3 of the operating period. So year 1 is year 3 here. Year 2 is month 8. And year 3. Now these values, I'm going to put them directly into my operating budget. For now, the administration fee. So here. Okay, and for the interest charges, we must not forget that we have interest charges for the lease contract as well. So I'm going to do the same. But as we have the same format, I only need to copy this and this part. So this is the interest for both the lease contract and the loan contract. And these are the values that I'm inserting within my budget as interest charges. Now I have to put in my budget the other expenses, 30 to the car text. So I now have all the revenues and all the charges in the budget as it was expected. For the first year we are registering losses. Now I would say would be a good time to check the financial statements of the company that we started from, and I have it here, the balance. I'm not really sure that this is the word in English for the year 2023, the last month of the year 2023. But I want to underline that this was the first year of operations. They really started their operating activity in June, maybe at the end, the middle of June 2023. So they really worked for, let's say, 6 months during 2023. And even though they were a startup, they generated sales of, let's see, class 7 of the accounts, revenues from the sale of finished goods, about 322,000 lei, revenues from the sale of merchandise, 451. So a total value of the sales of 770 something, let's say about 800,000 lei, which is a lot, I would say, for a startup. 800,000 means how much? 150,000 euros. So that for an entire year could have went to easily, I would say, 300,000 euros. We, at this point, we have sales of how much for the first year? 302. So it's about the same, but even so, we are registering losses. What can we do? What are the most important expenses? I would say the expenses with the raw materials. Can we reduce the expenses with the raw materials a little bit? Let's say if we can reduce a bit the prices for which we buy the raw materials. That on one hand, apart from that, it's the wages, but I would not say that we can reduce anymore. Maybe we could, again, reduce the number of the employees. So for the raw materials, let's see, for the whole potatoes, we should be able to reduce the price a bit. For the potatoes. Now this should be working well. Okay, I think I can leave it like this for the time being. So this could be an example of an operating budget. You have it here. Please ask questions. So for the last 2 weeks, we worked to create this operating budget. We made a list of types of revenues and types of charges, and we tried to forecast, to estimate each of them separately in a different table. And we got to this budget. And on the last line, we have the net profit or the net result. Now, if you have any questions concerning the operating budget, let's see. Our objective is to get to the forecasting of the net operating cash flows. Why? Because we are interested in being able to evaluate the financial feasibility of the investment. And all over the world, it is custom to use the net operating cash flow as a result indicator for the evaluation of the feasibility of the investments. So how do we get from the net operating result to the net operating cash flow? What is the difference between the profit and the net operating cash flow? Can anyone tell me? Is anyone still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. So let's see what should be the difference between the profits and the net cash flows.
The taxes?
No, not the taxes. On a yearly level, the profit, or rather the result, because the result, the net result could be profit or loss, either positive or negative, but the result is being calculated as a difference between the revenues and the charges, as we did right now in our operating budget. Right? So the profit should be the difference between the revenues and the charges, whereas the net operating cash flow should be the difference between the cash inflows and the cash outflows. So it's in terms of cash. So the difference between the net operating profit or loss and the net operating cash flow is really generated by the difference between, on one hand, the revenues and the cash inflows, and on the other hand, the charges and the cash outflows, payments. So is there a difference between the revenues and the inflows? Let's see. Let's look at our operating budget. I'm going to enlarge the picture. So we have, for instance, revenues from the sale of whole potatoes. We forecasted 67,500 euros for the first year. So these are sales, value of the sales, revenues. Is this the same as cash inflows? Are we collecting 67,500 euros for the first year from the selling of potatoes, whole potatoes? Maybe, maybe not. Let's say that indeed we sell to restaurants whole potatoes of 67,500 euros. So instantly we register them as revenue from the sales. So that should be clear. What about collecting the cash? It's possible and even probable in this field of work that we would not collect the cash immediately, but that we would rather accept a period for the collection of the cash. A trade loan granted to our clients, right? So we sell the potatoes today and we make the delivery, but we allow them to pay maybe in 30 days. So if that were the case, maybe by the end of the year, even though we have sold potatoes, whole potatoes of 67,500 euros, we might have collected the cash for only maybe 60,000. So there are still 7,500 euros at the end of the year as receivables that we should be collecting during the second year. So in this example, you can see that the revenues might not be equal to the cash inflows, right? I'm not even taking into consideration the VAT, the value-added tax. So I'm leaving that aside because that adds to it. The revenues do not contain VAT, whereas the cash collections should contain the VAT. That's a different story. we don't really need to touch it. It will not affect, well, in any case, not that much our feasibility analysis. What about the charges? Are all charges equal to payments? If I register charges with whole potatoes, with potatoes of 7,500 euros for the first year here, does that mean that I am paying to my suppliers 7,500 euros during the first year? Possibly, but I might not. Maybe in the same manner, my suppliers are delivering to me the potatoes, the raw materials, and I'm using them. I will use them because remember that these charges are representing the value of the potatoes that would be consumed, not bought, not only bought, but also consumed, right, during the first year. So does it necessarily mean that all that I have consumed, I have also paid to my suppliers? Possibly. Maybe I paid everything and the payments are equal to the charges. Maybe I paid even more because, again, maybe I bought more potatoes, but the charges only reflect what I consumed. Maybe I bought potatoes of 8,000 euros and I paid for it all. So the payments would be, in this case, higher than the charges. On the other hand, maybe I only paid 5,000, I consumed 7,500. So I still have accounts payable at the end of the year in my balance sheet. I have to pay in the second year to my suppliers the difference. So again, the charges may or may not be equal to the payments, but one particular charge will not be equal to the payments, and this charge is the charge with the depreciation of the fixed assets. It's here, number 29 in my operating budget. Why is it so? We are talking about the depreciation of the fixed assets that represented or would represent the object of our investment. We would pay for the different investment components during the implementation period, I would imagine, right? But the depreciation charges, we will register them later on during the operating activity, years and years after, throughout the economic lifespan of the investment, right? So during the years in which we register the depreciation charges, there is no payment, which is why they are considered to be non-monetary charges, as they do not involve payments, at least not in the same periods. So let's simplify things and let's imagine that all the revenues from sales have a correspondence in cash inflows during the same period. So we don't sell on trade credit. Let's say that all the charges involve payments with the exception of the depreciation charges. There we cannot imagine payments for those during the operating period. So I'm going to try to build a cash flow statement. I'm going to make some room here. And I'm copying the format of the operating budget. I'm going to call it cash flow statement. Now let's see. I'm just going to convert the revenues into cash inflows. This will take a few minutes, but not that long. So for instance, here I will simply consider that all the revenues from the sale of onion would be cashed within the same year, the year of their registration. So I will just convert them entirely into cash inflows. Same for the other products. Basically same for all revenues with the exception of the revenues from subsidies, which, as we have said, there's no way of imagining them being cashed. We cash the subsidies at the beginning, probably throughout the implementation period, so before the start of the operating activity. So there's no cash inflows from subsidies here. It will be simply zero. Total operating cash inflows. Now for the charges. I'm going to convert the charges into payments or cash outflows. Raw materials. Again, imagining that all that we consume, we pay for during the same period. So, as I was saying, there are no payments with depreciation charges. Payments with the bank fees, total operating, let's say, payments or cash outflows. Within the operating payment category, I will also need to include the payments for the revenue tax. So net operating cash flow. Net operating cash flow. The difference between the cash inflows and the cash outflows. So this will be our cash flow statement. Again, we have the operating budget, and we have the cash flow statement, at least for the operating activity. This is what interests us. This net operating cash flow would be the basis for us evaluating the financial feasibility of our investment. This is the direct targeted result of our investment from the financial point of view. This net operating cash flow should be sufficient to allow for the recovering of the capital and for, well, paying the cost of the capital. If you have questions, please. So this is what you should be also doing for the following week, when we'll have our last meeting. I need you to also forecast your revenues, charges, get your operating budget, and then, as I did, get from the operating budget to your operating cash flow statement. We will need it next week to do our feasibility analysis and sensitivity analysis. And we will end our course there. For today, one more thing that we could do, but as you aren't saying anything, I would not go into details. One thing that we could do would be to calculate our costs, our production costs for each type of product. It could be a process that could take a bit of time. So again, because of that, I do not believe it would be worth it getting into details, but you at least could calculate an average charge per kilo of product for the different products, so that you would have some sort of a benchmark when you set the price policy. Okay, I will stop my presentation here. And as I have said at the beginning, it would be great if we could have a conversation. Let's see if you have a list of your own with the different revenues and charges.
I haven't got yet because I'm doing the point 3. I don't know if we have to upload this week, but I'm finishing that.
What do you mean you're finishing that? What do you mean point 3?
The strategic plan and the 4 Ps.
Okay, but let's at least have a conversation. Your business involves what? I don't remember. Please remind me.
It's a room, a gaming room.
Oh, what?
A room for play video games. To renting the consoles.
Ah,
I don't know if it's
right.
okay.
I understand. Okay, that's interesting, I guess. As I was, I'm not sure whether you attended our first meetings. I believe you didn't. I'm sure that at least during our first meeting, I told your colleagues about the fact that our university um, always had during the last 10 years, always we had different programs for startups. We financed several hundred startups with subsidies, and right now we have a batch of 24 companies that we are financing. Well, each of them received about 55,000 euros, and at least one of them, really two, but one is specialized in this. They have a space of maybe about 300 square meters in Timișoara. They bought some consoles, some PlayStations, VR glasses, different other equipment, and they more or less, as you said, rent it to clients. They also organize events. So I should imagine that you would be doing the same thing.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. With
How
computers.
many consoles did you uh, put in your budget?
Play 5 PlayStations, 20 computers, 5 Xbox, and 5 Nintendo, something like that.
Well, a good PlayStation 5 should be about 600 euros. An Xbox is maybe 500, and Nintendo is 400. So 15 times, let's say 500, that's 7,500. That's not really much. And for the computers, what, 1,000 euros, 5 times 15, it's 15,000. So that's about 20 to 23,000 euros. That's not that much. I also imagine that you need furniture, so tables and chairs, right?
I've got the budget, and yeah, almost what you said.
Did you also take into consideration of what building a space or buying the space?
Yeah, of course. And
Okay,
the
and
taxes
under
of
this,
the construction
the
in
construction also. Okay, great. With so many equipment, I imagine that you would easily be able to also organize events, like for instance, maybe birthdays. Why not?
yeah,
Or different events for gamers.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so having said that, let's see what kind of revenues you would be generating. Normally, the clients would be paying by the hour, or how would they pay?
Yeah, by hour, yeah.
Okay, so you
And
have hourly fees, which would be, I imagine, the same for the PlayStations and for the Xboxes, maybe even the same for the computers.
no, as I can see here in Timisoara, because the idea is because I have gone to a place like this, and the fees in the computers are lower than in the PlayStation
For
and
the PlayStation. What's it called, this space in Timișoara? Maybe I know it.
I don't remember. It's
Okay.
next to the complex of the university.
Okay. Well, okay. Uh, yeah, these spaces should have consoles, should have computers, and I would say that most of them usually also have VR glasses. But again, that's done with the investment. No point in turning back. Mm, okay, so you have revenues from renting the consoles, the computers. What else? Are there even subscriptions or not? They all pay by the hour.
Yeah, it could be a good idea. A subscription, a monthly subscription,
No,
or
no,
by
don't
year.
don't complicate things. Do it the way you thought it. I
Ah,
don't mean to intrude. I'm sure that payment by the hour could be enough. Uh,
okay.
I would imagine, nevertheless, that in such a space you would also be selling at least beverages, maybe sodas, juices,
Yeah,
maybe even
yeah, yeah,
something
yeah,
to eat.
yeah. Fried potatoes or something like that. Snacks, I would
Okay.
say.
Then don't forget that for the beverages, if it's soda or water or juice, I would imagine that you would not be producing them yourself. You would be buying them and reselling them, like Coca-Cola,
Yeah.
Pepsi, or something like that. So these would be merchandise. It would not
Okay.
be products. This would not mean uh, revenues from the sale of finished products. It would rather be revenues from the selling of merchandise.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
there's this difference because they would not be the result of your production process.
Okay.
But on the other hand, it would be simpler. Me, if it were me, I would estimate these the revenues from the fees from the councils and the computers simply by estimating the occupancy percentage. So, for instance, if I have 15 computers, I would start from the daily program. You would plan to work with a program of what? Maybe from 2 o'clock to 22. I'm just saying, I'm imagining that in this business, you would have a few clients in the morning.
Yeah,
That's
and the
at
people's
least that's my opinion.
a lot of people go in the night,
In the night.
but
So, okay.
yeah, there
So
are
do you
fees
plan
for
of
the night
keeping
too.
it open for more than 8 hours, maybe 16 hours?
Yeah, more or less.
Okay. Then don't forget to double your personnel. Don't forget
Yeah,
that each
yeah.
employee can only work for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. So you would probably need to double your personnel to plan for a work schedule in 2 shifts.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so this would double your work time, but at the same time it would double your employee expenses, wage expenses,
Hmm.
and social taxes expenses. That would be important. Apart from that, I imagine that you would be working for what, the entire all year round, right? 360 days a year, 16 days, 16 hours a day. So by multiplying the two, you will get for the total timetable in hours.
Hmm.
And from this point on, if you multiply that by the number of computers, which is 15 in your case, you can get to a total time fund for the computers. Then, based on the demand, you could simply predict a percentage of occupancy, maybe 30%. That would increase maybe to 35, 40%. In my
Yeah.
opinion, in this field, you cannot imagine an average occupancy rate of 100%, maybe 50, 60% tops.
Okay.
Play with it a bit, but in my opinion, it would never go higher than that. I mean, there was a time I remember in Timișoara during the 90s, so a long time ago, 95, 96, 97, as the internet was breaking in. Uh, they created the first computer club in Timișoara, which was, by the way, called Computer Club in the complex there. And it was always full. They had about whatever 30, 40 computers, and it was day and night always full. But those times are long gone. So I would not imagine today such a space being occupied 100%, maybe an average of 40-50% tops. So on the other hand, I don't believe that such a business would need a lot of time to mature. So if in other fields, I would start with a percentage of occupancy of maybe 30% and going up to 40, 50, 60, 70, 80. Here, I would start maybe with 40, 45%, go in the second year to 50 and keep it there.
Okay.
So I would imagine such an evolution. So this would be one way to approach estimating, forecasting the revenues. And once you have forecasted the revenues, now you can have an idea about the total number of clients. And if you estimate the total number of clients for each year, you can estimate an average consumption of beverages, for instance, for each client. And this is the way in which you would be able to estimate the revenues from the selling of merchandise. This is how I would do it in any case.
Okay, thank you.
Of course. Other than that, you will have, you won't have, of course, expenses with raw materials, such as I did. I'm not sure about the French fries. Do you plan of frying the potatoes yourself? I mean, let me ask you, put it a different way. Did you include in your investment equipment for cooking, such as equipment for frying the potatoes?
No. I didn't include it.
Just sell them soda, juice,
yeah.
things like that. Chips, potato chips maybe, but not produced by yourself. Just merchandise.
Yeah,
okay, so that's that. You will then have expenses with merchandise, whatever you are selling. Then you will have the expenses with the gross wages and the social contributions. You can simply use the table that we did today together and just modify the type and number of employees and the wages. And of course, you will have the depreciation expenses, the same, just take the table that we simulated together and change, put in your own equipment and, well, assets, and maybe durations, change the duration if you believe it to be necessary. You will have land tax, you will have building tax, such as we did today, accounting, promotion services, of course, electricity, water, maybe heating, maybe telecommunication. So many of the expenses that we forecasted today. For which you can just take the tables and adapt them. Okay, so maybe it would be easy to just copy my sheet and modify it to your needs. Try it.
Okay, thank you.
Of course. Alba Gasion, are you there?
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about your types of revenues and charges?
Can you repeat, please?
Yes. If you can tell us what is the main list of revenues and charges that your business would generate.
Oh, yeah.
What do you do?
I've done a restaurant, and the revenues, for example, from the sale of pizza mass, cheese, mushrooms, ham, paper, eggs, some ingredients for the pizza.
So let me get this straight. You have a restaurant. You are selling pizza or mostly pizza. So on one hand, you would be generating revenues from the sale of different types of pizza. On the other hand, you said that you would be having registering charges with raw materials, the ingredients for the pizzas, right? That's great. It's simple. It's great.
Yeah.
By the way, we have, as I was saying to your colleague, that we have a lot of businesses that we are financing. We have in this batch 2 restaurants that are producing pizza. So by the way, if you are in Timișoara and you are interested, both of you, I can connect you with the people that are doing these businesses. If you are interested to collect more information to see what they are doing, just let me know. Okay, so it should be easy. It should be easy. You have yourself, you have revenues from the sale of the pizzas, different types of pizzas. In my opinion, you would, in a real restaurant, I imagine that you would have maybe 20, 30 types of pizza. Don't try to estimate each of them separately. So either do just one, or if you plan to have prices that are very, very different, let's say, I don't know, in Timișoara, you could find a pizza of average dimension for 6 euros, 6 or 7 euros. But I'm sure that in other places you could find it for 7, 8 or 9 euros. So in my opinion, if you don't plan to have such high price variations, just estimate the sales for one average type, with an average price.
Yeah,
of course. Apart from pizza, if you plan to sell anything else, then estimate the revenue separately.
Okay.
And for sure, you will sell merchandise as your colleague does. I mean, I imagine that with the pizzas, you would be selling at least water or sodas, right? This would be merchandise.
Okay. Okay, perfect. Yeah.
Okay. And Roxana Popescu, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Yeah.
What are your revenues and charges? The types.
So yeah, so my idea of a business would be a print shop, but I would like a more niche one. So I would like to go for UV printing, acrylic printing, de nișă. Nu știu cum să traduc.
Okay.
Yeah, so basically at this point, the expenses are pretty much clear. The revenues will be mostly from selling out different kind of acrylic prints and other material prints, because UV printers actually allow you to print on whatever material can go into the printer. So that can be a tennis ball or a cap or t-shirts or stuff like that. So my idea comes because I'm also a designer, and actually we miss that kind of product in Timișoara. I couldn't find anywhere to print acrylic stuff on, and actually my idea comes from the wish of printing on acrylic banners. But doing some more research, I got to the point that it's actually about UV printers that actually allows you to print on a lot of materials. And that's why I kind of am able to expand that idea even more. So I have to be honest with you, I actually wanted to go for the UV printers only, but these do not really cost a lot. So the most professional one would go up to $17,000. So at this point, more than 2, I actually had some struggle on thinking big, as you've mentioned the first time we've met. So more than 2, it's hard for me to sustain because I think I'm thinking too small at this point. But I would like to go for a more like one direction only, and not printing all over the place and papers and all of that. But at this point, while I was researching some more, I think that revenues are going to be able to flow in from all sorts of materials if I go to think more than just acrylic. So think about t-shirts and tennis balls and all sorts of things. But that, I think, just to answer directly to your question, that's actually the most important source of revenue at this point that I'm seeing.
Okay, I just want to clear out one thing.
Yes.
As far as I understand, your revenues will come from rendering services of printing. You would not be selling products, but you would render services for whoever wants to print something. Am I getting it right?
No, actually, I would like to offer also the products, because you don't really find like this type of material, acrylic, that I'm mentioning. You don't really find it in a lot of places. So I would I would like to be able to provide the service and the product all together. I know there are some printers in Timișoara that you go there with the t-shirts and they print it on, and you kind of assume the risk if it goes well or not. But with regards to the acrylic print, I would like to also provide the product itself, so not only the service.
So the client, at least he comes with the design, but you get the whatever they would be called consumables, you do the printing, and you deliver the finished product to them, but based on their design. It's not like you're producing something on a larger scale and then you are trying to sell to the mass public. That's not the case. You are always doing the printing based on orders, right?
That's a separate service that I'm thinking about. Design and print. This is mostly my desire of business a while now. So, but yeah, of course, it would be bad for business if you would not consider also clients' design, because most of them just come with something already prepared. So it's the design thing. It would be a separate service, but you would still print like clients' designs, as you've said. Yeah. But the revenue.
Well, actually, I asked you whether you would also have your own designs. If you would also keep an inventory of products that you would be selling to the public. I understood that that's not the case, that you always work based on orders. Am I right?
No, that would be a separate service of my business idea. So also offering design services. It can be only design and print, or only print. This is how I'm envisioning.
No, I understood that. What I asked you was if apart from that, you would also be in the position of creating your own design, your own again, no client involved up to here. You print the product, you have it in your inventory, and you try to sell it to a larger public.
No.
So you would not be producing it based on an order. Are you also trying to do this or not?
No.
I'm understanding that's not the case.
No, that's not the
No,
case.
okay, that was my initial question. Okay, I get it.
Yes.
So I can understand now the types of revenue. Then for the charges, of course, you will have the charges with raw materials, that's for sure. Electricity, depreciation, personnel. If you have your own space, that would mean, as we have simulated here, land tax and building tax. So basically everything that we estimated ourselves today.
Yeah, also licenses and software stuff. I have written down something like that. So raw materials, office equipment, licenses, and
well, wait, the office equipment is part of the initial investment. So that would generate depreciation charges during the operating period.
Correct, yeah.
That's what you mean, of course. And
Yeah.
the same for the computer programs. You would be buying them initially and then calculate their depreciation later on during the operating period. The way we did it today.
Do we have
Right?
depreciation for software tools?
Yes, of course. The software would be an intangible asset, and you would probably calculate the depreciation for it throughout a period of 3 years, such as I did today.
No, I'm just asking because at work we don't do that for licenses.
That's strange. Maybe that's the case because you would probably pay for licenses on a monthly basis. Do you have subscriptions?
Some of them on a yearly basis, others on a monthly basis.
For
But-
those that are on monthly basis, I would understand why they would be registered as monthly expenses. For those that are on a yearly basis payment, those I would capitalize. And you might have also others that are lifetime licenses. Those are the first ones that should be capitalized, recognized as intangible assets. So for any computer program that I buy for lifetime, let's say an Office or the MS Windows, if I buy the license, I recognize it into my accounting as an intangible asset. So I don't register it immediately as a charge. I recognize it as an asset, and I will calculate its depreciation throughout a period of whatever, as I was saying, maybe 3 years. Okay?
Yeah, I see your point.
Well, I think you are on the right track. Question for you all. Do you think that you would be able to finish this financial simulation until the following week?
I don't think I'm going to be able to do that. Because I mostly manage to work during weekends. Weekdays are very busy for me. So making the math, it's been hard for me. So the only productive days are the weekends for me. So that's not a lot of time. Unfortunately, I'm not only a student at this point.
Of course, I know that. Okay, at least try. Maybe you can make some progress even if you won't finish. And if you will need it, maybe I can give you some guidance the following week. I will continue next week with the final part, which is the most technical part, the financial feasibility analysis and sensitivity analysis. And again, as I said at the beginning of our meeting, we can meet again. If you don't finish now, of course, I'm talking for all of you, we can have at least one more meeting, but even more if you will need them. So we'll see. From my part, that would be for today. I don't think that it would be a good idea to pass to the feasibility subject. It's a kind of different subject. I would end it here for today if it's okay with you.
Yeah, just one more question, please.
Of course.
So when is the final deadline to upload the project? Is that prior the exam or 1 week prior the exam? We didn't talk about that.
The deadline for the project, it can be whenever you want it to be. From my point of view, it can be the day of the exam. If that's better for you, it doesn't bother me.
Okay, yeah, that's good for me because I will have more time to focus on this.
Okay, then it's like that. It's established. It will be the day of the exam.
And you will add like a resource on the platform to upload there the final project, right?
Yes. I will create a section for the uploading of the final project, which would be, the form of it would be the Word file, right? So only the Word file in which you will translate copy all the tables that you do in the Google Sheets or within the Excel files.
Yeah. And for the exam day, when we will need
I can't hear you. I imagine
like
that you want
a separate PowerPoint, like a summary of the Word document, or just discuss on the Word document itself.
For the presentation, you mean?
Yes.
No, don't bother with the PowerPoint, because when you will do the presentation, I will listen to you and I will look in the project. So prepare your presentation. We will talk about that the following week. Prepare your presentation. I mean, prepare what you mean to say so that you would be efficient. We will establish it together. I would say that maybe 7 minutes for each presentation, and we leave 3 minutes for my questions. So of course you should prepare to present your project in 7 minutes, but with no PowerPoint. When you talk, I will look within the project, and later on I will ask you questions. So for me, there's no need for a PowerPoint. I will not look in it. I will look in the project when you speak.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay. So
I've got another question.
of course.
Do you know when is the exam and the percentage of the project?
No, they were not set. They will probably only be set by the end of the semester, which will be the end of May. So we would probably know in about 1 month, no
Okay.
sooner than that. You still have classes. As far as I know, you have a second, the masters have a second batch of classes that starts, I would imagine, about now.
Okay. And the percentage of the project, how much is it? The value?
Within the total, the
Yeah,
final
total.
grade. There's I hope I'm not mistaken. I think there's 30% for your uploads throughout the semester, and the rest of 70% is the presentation for the exam, which is made of 2 components: the final project, but your answers to my more theoretical questions as well.
Okay. Thank you.
But the project, of course, is the most important part, and it is all related to the project anyway.
Okay. Thank you.
Of course. Okay, so that's it for today. See you next week.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Is it online, the exam, or presential?
Oh, very important question. You are right. No, unfortunately, we are not allowed to organize it online. You are right. That's an important question. I say unfortunately. I mean, I would have no problem with sustaining it online, but these are the rules at national level, and the faculty, although it tried, was not able to obtain this possibility of organizing the exam online. So no, we will have to see each other face to face.
But it's with our computers or not? It's by writing or
I don't know. I don't care if you come with the computers, you can. There's no problem. But of course, I would want to see that you are able to present what you did there freely. I hope that you don't plan to come and just read something out of the computer. So I'm expecting you to prepare a presentation because I'm trying to evaluate what you know.
Okay.
Of course, you can look at the data, but hopefully you will prepare a structure.
Okay, thank you.
Of course. Okay, so I'll see you next week. Have a good evening.
Thank you. You too. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.